Ivor Cummins. Part 1. Iron deficiency affects millions of women. Here are some symptoms from Lisa Emerson's story. This is from the Ivor Cummins podcast, April 23rd, 2021, in his interview with Lisa J. Emerson of elusiveiron.com.
Kind of what happened you all the way through to discovering what the problem was.
Right. So as you said, with the hyperferritinemia, that's a problem more often now with metabolic syndrome and diabetes and long-term kidney dialysis and that sort of thing. But in the general population, that generally occurs more in men, maybe 1%.
Hyperferritinemia, elevated ferritin in the blood. Hypoferritinemia, unusually small amount of ferritin in the blood. Ferritin, a protein involved in storing iron.
Hypoferritinemia, that doesn't have any complications with it, or just low iron or low serum iron, is a very common problem, but it's horribly underdiagnosed. So I ended up at the end, no doctors were able to figure it out. So it started out with me in my mid to late teens, just being very, very, very tired all the time. And, you always make excuses as to why you're tired. You have stuff going on and, school activities, other things happened where I just had no motivation. So as I got older, it sort of stayed the same. I had depression, some arthritis, some carpal tunnel, things like that, no big deal. When I got older, I started a charity job that was very high intensive type exercise because I was running around outside with a Major League Baseball outfit. As the months went by, I started getting extremely tired. And I mean, there were days where I couldn't stay awake for more than 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And I started having major sinus issues. I've never had a sinus infection, but the allergy type sinus issues, I started to get extremely painful, just pain in every part of my body. At some points, the pain would shift to different locations after a few minutes or a few hours. It was absolutely bizarre. I was sweating like a pig, just walking around outdoors. It didn't matter the temperature. It was just sweat was pouring off of me. I was flushed. My heart started doing weird things. Every once in a while, it would skip a beat, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, when I got to this position, I was a few years ago, it had started skipping 2 beats at a time. And then where it got really bad, it skipped 3 beats at a time. And then at the height of this whole thing, 4 beats at a time. And I can tell you, nothing is more unsettling than feeling the blood settle in your body and you trying to Google really quick how to do CPR on yourself. I had blood pressure spikes and dips. I was often had low blood pressure. I had temperature spikes. So my normal running temperature is about 96.8. And I know when I get to 99 because I feel like I'm under a heat lamp. Any sort of stress would trigger it more. So I would get to the point where I would have massive changes and fluctuations. Got to the point where I assumed I had a thyroid issue. So I went to the doctor, local GP, and I asked for a thyroid ultrasound rather. She refused that. And I thought, okay, so I kind of fought for that for a little bit because that's one of the things to rule out. It's not a complicated test. My thyroid's actually fine. My TSH was raised, which goes along with this condition because it is often misdiagnosed as hypothyroidism, and it causes hypothyroidism. So loads of people out there walking around on thyroid meds who just have iron deficiency. I got to the point where the pain in my body became fibromyalgia. Every cell of your body is screaming, and there's nothing you can do to curb the pain. Drinking took the edge off. There is no other medication I could take to even get it down any. I was curled in a fetal position for a day or two, just crying because there's nothing to do about it. I had a little bit of depression growing up, but it got to the point where it was suicidal depression, which I never thought I would be in that condition. I ended up getting bipolar. And, you hear about bipolar and it doesn't get better as you get older. Well, a lot of the times it's just iron dysregulation. I didn't know when it would hit. I would have days like that, or I would go for weeks. I couldn't ever tell, and then it would dip again, and then I would get depressed. A little bit of muscle twitching. I thought, oh, well, I'll just increase the potassium and magnesium in my diet, which it turns out if you do things like that, it can affect iron metabolism.
Hyperferritinemia, more often now a problem with metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, diabetes, and long-term kidney dialysis. It generally occurs more in men, maybe up to 1%. Hyperferritinemia, elevated ferritin in the blood. Hypoferritinemia, unusually small amount of ferritin in the blood. Ferritin, a protein involved in storing iron. Hypoferritinemia, that doesn't have complications, is just low iron, is horribly underdiagnosed. So in my case, I ended up with no doctors being able to figure it out. Starting in my mid to late teens, I was very, very tired all the time and had no motivation. As I got older, I got depression, arthritis, carpal tunnel. Also, as I got older, I started doing a charity job with the baseball team. I was extremely tired. Some days I couldn't stay awake for more than 10 minutes at a time. I had major sinus issues of the allergy type. And I had extreme pain in different parts of the body, and it would shift locations. And I found myself sweating like a pig, no matter the temperature. I also had heart problems. Sometimes it would skip a beat. And then as it progressed, it would skip 2 beats, and then 3 beats. And at the height of the problem, it would skip 4 beats at a time. And I could feel the blood settle in the body as I'm trying to Google how to do CPR on yourself. I also had blood pressure spikes and dips. I often had low blood pressure, and I had temperature spikes, often triggered by stress. It got to the point I thought I had a thyroid issue. I went to my local GP, general practitioner doctor, who refused to do an ultrasound. But I fought for it, got it. Turned out that my thyroid is fine. But my TSH was high, which is common with iron deficiency. It is often misdiagnosed as a thyroid issue. Every cell in the body was screaming, and there's nothing you could do about it. Alcohol would take the edge off. Nothing else seemed to work. I had so much pain that I was curled up in a fetal position, just crying. I had a little depression growing up, but then it got to the point of suicidal depression. I also got bipolar disorder. It sometimes is simply an iron dysregulation. I would go days one way, and then it would flip, and I'd be depressed. And I had a little bit of muscle twitching. I thought, I'll just increase potassium and magnesium in my diet. But it turns out that doing that can affect your iron metabolism.